Chelsea, they truly never learn, do they? We've seen this exact script play out before, and we all know precisely how it ends.
Right, let's dive straight into the absolute cataclysm that's just hit the Arsenal fan base. Out of nowhere, Chelsea have swooped in and snatched Morgan Rogers right out of our hands in a staggering £120 million deal, making him the most expensive British player in history. This is despite Arsenal having personal terms completely locked down with the player for weeks. It's causing absolute uproar online. The word going around the airwaves is that Rodgers completely dumped Arteta after a personal phone call from Xabi Alonso. Mate, how are you reading this? Is this sheer negligence from the Arsenal hierarchy or a calculated financial play?
Chelsea, they truly never learn, do they? We've seen this exact script play out before, and we all know precisely how it ends. First and foremost, we need to dismantle this narrative being spun that Rodgers dumped Arteta for Alonso. That is fundamentally wide of the mark. Every reputable journalist and media outlet close to the Stamford Bridge confirmed weeks ago that Chelsea were desperately trying to open channels with Rodgers. He refused to give them the time of day because his heart was set on the Emirates. He had agreed personal terms with us a while back. This sudden PR spin is simply to save face, to make it look like Chelsea wasn't just a fallback option. Because when you spend that money, that astronomical amount of money, you have to frame the player as a priority. The real question we should be asking is, what caused the landscape to shift so dramatically overnight?
Exactly. We knew personal terms were wrapped up weeks ago, and club-to-club talks with Aston Villa were well underway. So, mate, what on earth changed at the 11th hour to let Chelsea steal a march on us like this?
It comes down to cold, hard financial structures. Yes, personal terms were settled, but the massive sticking point arose when Arsenal opened formal club-to-club negotiations. Last week, Villa dropped a bombshell. Out of the £120 million valuation, they demanded a staggering £117 million paid up front, with a measly £3 million in performance add-ons. For a player of Morgan Rogers' current profile, that structure is economically absurd. Arsenal quite rightly drew a line in the sand, stating they wouldn't go a penny over £90 million. Chelsea caught wind of the breakdown, smelled blood in the water, and did what they always do: they agreed to pay the entire lump sum up front. Because Rodgers lacks a release clause, Villa naturally gravitated toward the highest bidder. They engineered a bidding war, and Chelsea happily obliged. On the players' side, Rodgers was desperate to avoid a drawn-out transfer saga. He wanted his future sorted swiftly. Arsenal communicated their reservations regarding Villa's financial demands to his representatives, promising a restructured approach this week, but reiterated their £90 million cap. Throughout all of this, Rodgers remained entirely respectful of Aston Villa's hierarchy, prioritising the club's ability to secure a historic fee if he were to leave. When Villa informed him of Chelsea's package and a soft landing agreement involving Nicholas Jackson in a separate deal moving to Villa Park, Rodgers and his camp realised the Arsenal track could drag on indefinitely. They opened negotiations, accepted the terms, and Arsenal sensibly walked away, evaluating the sheer financial risk. It wasn't a hijack in the truest sense, because Arsenal never actually lodged a formal written bid. It was pure financial pragmatism, though you can trust the media to twist it as a failure on our part.
From what I gather, Arteta had multiple conversations with Rodgers. He was clearly the number one target for that left-wing berth. And let's be honest, buying proven Premier League pedigree drastically cuts down the adaptation risk. Mate, looking at the big picture, did we make the right call backing out?
Look, we know this Arsenal regime operates with strict internal valuations. They will only shatter their wage or transfer structure if they are entirely convinced the talent matches the fee. Take Declan Rice as the blueprint. We were ready to match any bid because his foundational talent justified the market rate. If you ask me whether Morgan Rogers is worth £120 million, my answer is a definitive no. His ceiling doesn't justify that outlay. Arteta clearly aligned with that view. The club wouldn't abort a mission of this scale without his explicit consent. We have to look at this through a broader tactical lens. What is he filling in the squad? And is his profile distinct enough from what we already possess? If he were a completely unique, transformative profile, we would have found the £117 million up front. But he isn't. Look at our business last summer. We brought in Eberechi Eze and Noni Madueke from the Premier League. While they provided crucial depth, During our injury crisis last season, can we honestly say they've completely justified their price tags yet? Eze, in particular, shares a very similar profile to Rodgers based on what we did at Crystal Palace, yet he hasn't completely set the Emirates alight. Imagine repeating that exact scenario, but with a British record fee hanging around the player's neck. Furthermore, I've consistently argued that if we are bringing in a marquee left winger, it needs to be a tactical departure from Christos Zolis. Tactically, Zolis and Rodgers are nearly identical, even if the Greek possesses a superior burst of acceleration. Neither of them are true touchline wingers, which is precisely what we need to balance that left flank. Rodgers is a creative, inside drifting winger with decent isolated 1v1 qualities. We need a transition monster, a distance ball carrier who manipulates space via both short and long bursts with a more lethal ball striking capability. When you weigh all of those tactical variables together, pulling the plug was entirely logical.
If you're tired of mainstream PR spin and want elite tactical breakdowns, raw transfer debate, and the unfiltered truth about the Gunners, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the notification bell, drop your take in the comments. Welcome to Arsenal Inside Out. Your club dissected properly. The rumour mill is already turning though. Word is Arsenal have inquired about RB Leipzig's winger Yann Diomande, just to gauge the parameters of a potential deal. What's your take on Diomande? Can he be that marquee answer on the left?
At this stage, it's classic agent-driven speculation. We know how the media machinery kicks into overdrive the moment a club of Arsenal's stature misses out on a high-profile target. Agents routinely feed journalists lines to pivot the spotlight onto their clients. Diomande is a highly capable footballer, but there is a reason PSG ultimately cooled their interest in him, and it's the exact same reason we backed away from Rodgers. PSG felt Leipzig's £100 million valuation completely detached from his actual output. Let's be frank, he had an incredibly underwhelming World Cup campaign. He failed to perform when the lights were brightest. Furthermore, I have serious reservations about the Bundesliga tax. History has dealt us some harsh lessons. Regarding players transitioning from Germany to the physical demands of the Premier League, spending record-breaking fees on that transition is a gamble. That rarely pays dividends. Timo Werner and Florian Wirtz are prime examples of how non-linear that step-up can be. You simply cannot gamble £100 million on tactical uncertainty. Liverpool previously had a £100 million bid rejected by Leipzig for him anyway. Even if Andrea Berta is in dialogue with his camp, I wouldn't read too much into it. Berta famously loves to keep 4 or 5 plates spinning simultaneously for every single position.
Spot on. Bar Erling Haaland, who is a complete anomaly, players arriving from the Bundesliga do tend to struggle with the transition over here. You've made an excellent point there. But looking at the market right now, which available left winger actually fits the specific criteria you just outlined? We've heard mentions of Bradley Barcola, Marcus Rashford, Rafael Leao, Julian Alvarez, and even Vinicius Jr., given the reported standoff in his contract negotiations with Real Madrid.
If Vinicius Jr. is genuinely on the market due to a Madrid contract standoff, you drop everything else. You stop all other negotiations, tear up the script, and secure him by any means necessary. He is the solitary world-class asset available who instantly elevates the absolute ceiling of this squad. He possesses every single attribute required and has proven it repeatedly on the grandest European stages. But let's be real, that deal belongs in the realm of fantasy rather than reality. Looking at the remaining names realistically, my preference would actually be Marcus Rashford. For a fee in the region of £40 to £50 million, his Premier League experience and sheer versatility across the front line represent incredibly sensible business. Bradley Barcola will command upwards of £100 million now that the Rodgers deal has inflated the market. Transition-wise, Barcola can execute those devastating moments perfectly, but he still lacks elite, clinical execution in the final third, despite our heavy links to him. Let's see how that develops now that Rodgers is out of the picture. However, I have a strong inkling that Arteta's true preference is Julian Alvarez. Mikel has a long-standing, intense tactical infatuation with the Argentine. The only reason that deal hasn't accelerated is the post-World Cup scheduling and clarity. Industry murmurs suggest Arteta views Alvarez completely differently than the rest of us. Where many see a Gabriel Jesus replacement, Mikel sees a dynamic answer for the flank. The massive advantage with Alvarez is the financial structure. His fee can be heavily amortized across a long-term contract, unlike the restrictive upfront package Villa demanded. If I'm being romantic, Vinicius is peerless. If I'm being realistic, I'd opt for Rashford. He excels in transition, possesses a lethal 1v1 threat, and strikes the ball cleanly. I know a section of the fan base will vehemently disagree due to his bouts of inconsistency, but under Arteta's structural discipline, he could be devastating.
Right, let's throw this open to the listeners. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Bradley Barcola, Rafael Leao, Julian Alvarez, Yan Diomande, or Marcus Rashford? Who is your definitive marquee signing for that left flank? Now, let's pivot. Reports are circulating that we're looking at John Stones on a free transfer as a short-term contingency plan for William Saliba while he recovers from that back injury. Stones and Ezri Konsa are reportedly at the top of the shortlist. Mate, do you genuinely believe John Stones has the capacity to step in as a reliable short-term cover for Saliba? Or should we just place our trust in Christian Mosquera?
It entirely hinges on the definitive medical timeline of Saliba's back injury. While John Stones is unquestionably a superior, more tactically sophisticated option than Ezri Konsa due to his elite experience, relying on him if Saliba faces a lengthy spell on the sidelines is an immense gamble, given Stones' own notoriously fragile injury history. The reason Stones has entered the conversation on a free transfer is that Aston Villa are demanding a premium of around 40 to 50 million pounds for Konsa. From what I am hearing internally, Saliba's back issue will not require surgical intervention, meaning we aren't looking at a catastrophic long-term absence. If that remains the case, picking up John Stones on a free is a good option. It allows Christian Mosquera to continue his development without being unfairly thrown into the deep end, while simultaneously preserving the 40 to 50 million pounds we would have sunk into Konsa, allowing us to reallocate those vital funds directly into our primary attacking targets.
Right, let's broaden the lens to the newly concluded FIFA World Cup, where Spain emerged as champions after an absolute tactical masterclass against Lionel Messi's Argentina. Mikel Arteta explicitly tasked his Arsenal players before the tournament to bring back the trophy, and now we've got 3 World Cup winners, Mikel Merino, Martin Zubimendi and David Raya, all hailing from the gaffer's home country. Mikel must be beaming like a proud older brother right now, mate.
And rightly so. Frankly, no team deserved that trophy more than Spain. Their consistency, tactical discipline, and minimal fuss from the group stages onward were exemplary. They endured arguably the toughest knockout route in modern tournament history, dispatching juggernauts like Portugal and France before completely suffocating Argentina in the final. Even with Messi producing moments of sheer magic, throughout the tournament, it would have been a travesty had Spain not lifted the trophy. They set the absolute benchmark for elite performance. To stifle Argentina to 0 shots on target over 90 minutes in a World Cup final is a statistical anomaly. That ought to be framed in a museum. It highlighted a fundamental footballing truth. Tactical balance and structural control in midfield will always trump individual brilliance. It's just a crying shame England fumbled their golden opportunity against Argentina in the semi-finals, because keeping this England side without a single shot on target would have been impossible.
That semi-final, don't get me started, mate. Especially after watching England comfortably dismantle France in the 3rd place playoff. The fans are absolutely fuming with Thomas Tuchel. The team selection against Argentina and his reactive late substitutions when we were holding a lead were completely naive. Retreating into an ultra-defensive low block handed all the momentum to Argentina and killed our final hopes stone dead. People are genuinely questioning whether he's the right man to lead us forward. How did you read his game management in that semi-final? Was he right to go ultra-defensive to nullify Messi, or was it tactical suicide?
It was absolute tactical suicide, and the supporters have every right to be incensed. Football at the elite level is far more psychological than physical. Your team selection, your substitutions and tactical shifts send loud, subconscious signals to both your own team and the opposition. Reports coming out of the Argentine camp suggest they were astonished when they saw the team sheet, no Bukayo Saka, no Marcus Rashford, and even more baffled when Tuchel refused to introduce them to stretch the pitch late on. That gave Argentina the psychological license to commit bodies forward without any fear of transition punishment. The fundamental flaw in Tuchel's logic was believing you nullify Lionel Messi by retreating into a shell. You do not stop Messi by inviting pressure onto your 18-yard box. You nullify him by scoring the second goal or by establishing a commanding mid-block that severs his supply lines entirely. I understand Bukayo Saka was being managed carefully due to his knock, but the moment Argentina began ramping up the intensity, you act proactively instead of retreating.
So tactically, what should Tuchel have done during that crucial second half spell when England was sitting on that 1-0 lead?
You swap Anthony Gordon for Kobbie Mainoo. This is to construct a central box and gain numerical superiority in the pivot. You push Jude Bellingham into a fluid false nine role, withdraw Harry Kane and Morgan Rogers, and introduce Saka and Rashford out wide. Suddenly, you possess a devastatingly dynamic transition threat. If Argentina push their fullbacks high, Saka and Rashford exploit the wide channels instantly. Meanwhile, a central core of Rice, Anderson, Mainoo and Bellingham retains possession and dictates the tempo. Those three tactical tweaks would have completely snuffed out Argentina's belief. Spain demonstrated the exact blueprint. Their Rodri-led midfield starved Messi of service at the root. That Spanish engine room was the undisputed crown jewel of the tournament. It proved that if your midfield iteration is structurally sound, you can dominate matches even when your forward line isn't firing on all cylinders. And that brings us neatly back to Arsenal's transfer strategy. It's precisely why we must pull out all the stops to sign Bruno Guimaraes. A midfield rotation featuring Guimaraes, Rice, Odegaard and Eze is a terrifying prospect for the rest of Europe.
Speaking of Bruno Guimaraes, word is Arsenal have established a strict internal valuation for him, and if Newcastle's asking price exceeds that limit, the hierarchy are prepared to walk away, just like they did with Morgan Rogers. Newcastle are already venting frustration, claiming we've turned Bruno's head because he's got his heart set on the Emirates. Mate, is walking away from Bruno really a sensible move here? Or would leaving him stranded after he's pushed for the move be a massive mistake?
Look, that strict valuation model is the core philosophy of the Arteta and Berta era. More often than not, it protects the club from financial recklessness. But occasionally, it leaves you vulnerable to massive regret when a transformative asset slips away. With Bruno Guimaraes, it all comes down to the delta between Newcastle's price tag and our internal assessment. In my view, Bruno is the rare exception where you stretch your valuation parameters. We must recognise the transformative control his presence brings. Paired alongside Declan Rice, it replicates the positional platform that Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey provided during the 2022-23 campaign. It's a platform that completely liberated Gabriel Martinelli and allowed Martin Odegaard to wreak havoc in the half spaces. Martinelli, in particular, has struggled for consistency since Xhaka's departure because he lacked that specific passing profile operating behind him. Bruno solves that structural flaw instantly. Furthermore, with Declan Rice set to miss the opening stretch of the season, we urgently require an established leader and dictator of tempo in that engine room. If the discrepancy between Newcastle's valuation and ours is a mere 10 to 15 million pounds, this is not the moment for penny pinching. Pay the premium, secure the player, and give Arsenal the platform for total dominance.